Are you seriously going to eat, you fat blibbity blabbity blob? I mean, some of you might be like,
continual.
why would I want to start this?
Sensitive. She's sensitive.
You are listening to the Tami Talks Unscripted Healing Podcast, where we share stories that are, you guessed it, unscripted.
That's the thing, this journey doesn't stop.
It doesn't really
right?
end. We have a general sense of the topic each episode, but really the whole point is just to show up and be authentic and let our inner child speak its truth. And I have continued to work through that story of constantly hearing, well, we don't want, got a hot dog on our hands. Yeah, guess what, Mr. Sabatsky, you do. So I'm so excited that you are here, and it is my hope that you hear yourself somewhere in the story so that way you can feel seen and heard as well. So let's start talking. Welcome to the Tami Talks Unscripted Healing Podcast. For those of you that are tuning in for the very first time, thank you for following your intuition to press play and see what this Tami Talks Unscripted Healing thing was all about. And for those of you that are joining week after week, continuing to press play, even though you have no idea what you're getting into each and every episode, thank you so much for sticking with me. It is truly an honor to be able to sit down in front of this mic every week and hopefully channel whatever message that you need to hear. And that's really what today's episode is. And it's interesting because I sat down when I did the superhero episode. Again, for those of you that are tuning in for the first time, you're like, what the hell is she talking about? Yeah, I dressed up as Wonder Woman and Maleficent on the podcast. So go check it out on YouTube. It was so interesting to me that for whatever reason, you guys know, like I do these episodes completely unscripted. I have zero notes sitting in front of me. Santino and I last week had zero notes. We texted like 2 sentences to each other beforehand of like, yeah, I kind of like you to talk about your, the work that you and your wife have done and kind of the dynamic that you two have. And that was it. That was it. And we turned it into an 1.5 hour episode that could have went longer. So I really have learned to trust my ability to just let whatever comes through come through for you. But what was interesting when I did this superhero episode, I knew earlier that week exactly what I wanted to talk about. I didn't need to take any notes, and I don't know why, but for some reason I decided to take some notes. And I put them down in front of me, and I had to restart the episode 4 times. Generally, I just hit and I go and whatever, I give to faith. I give to faith. But for whatever reason, I was just like, whoa, I was just so like discombobulated. That's a fun word to say. Truly, I was, and I could not figure out why. Like I was so confident about the topic because I could spew about this kind of stuff all day long. I've lived this superhero life. I've had to do the villain. Like I had no problem talking about anything in that episode. But as soon as I put a freaking piece of paper down in front of me with notes on it, I blocked my ability to channel. And obviously that didn't dawn on me until after I had to restart for the 5th time. And it's like, it is the notes sitting in front of you. It's already in your head that you're going to have to follow these or that you're going to miss something or you're going to go off whatever tangent. I'm like, yeah, but that's what you do. And that's what I hope makes these episodes kind of fun is that, oh, Tami went on a tangent again. There we go. Going for a ride. But I literally blocked my ability to channel. And I know this when I think back to times when I have done presentations and things like that, when I did not know that I had that gift and did not trust myself, I would rehearse a presentation, basically having it memorized word for word. And I understand the value in that, right? But now I know that I do much better when I truly, as I say in the intro to this podcast, is I have a general sense of the topic, but I truly just need to let it come through. And so that's what I was going to do today. I was like, you know what? I know the topic I want to talk about, and I'm just going to let whatever come through. And so settle up. But the other kind of thing that happened today, because I always like to share, little random stories and things. This morning was kind of a rough morning for personal reasons, whatever reasons. And I was listening to something. You guys know I'm all about my signs and synchronicities. and something that I was listening to had mentioned like this little box, and that you would find something in it that had significant meaning. And I, again, didn't even think anything of it. I just remember hearing it. It was like in one ear, out the other. And then I was picking up, because when Arlo's here, he gets out every toy possible. And so I was just kind of picking up the area over there in the living room, picking up his toys. And I happened to see something sitting on the shelf. And I was like, what is that? And so I found, and again, I'll try to describe this as best as I can for those of you that are listening, but I found this little chunk of wood sitting on the shelf, and I was like, what the heck is that from? So I see what it's sitting next to, and what it is sitting next to is this little box, this little butterfly box that my daughter got from her grandma. And it's really cool. It's like this wooden, all different colors of wood, and it's this beautiful butterfly. Well, it actually is like a little treasure box. So you open the lid, and it's like a little puzzle. So there's another little piece that you have to get to take out to slide the thing back. But then the lid was missing the corner piece, which is what I saw. And so, not even thinking, I opened the box, totally forgetting what's inside. And it's a picture of my father-in-law. And if you have listened to previous episodes, I believe it was the episode with Kevin from Tellurian, where I mentioned that I lost my father-in-law to suicide. And he has played such a significant role. Really, I feel like was probably the massive spark to my own awakening in 2017. Because that's when I really started to notice the signs and the synchronicities and just like, what is going on? And I just felt so close to him and so guided by him. And so today, to see that picture was like, whoo, because oddly enough, I mean, I talk to God and the universe and things all the time. And this morning specifically, I was talking to him quite a bit. And so when I pulled that open and saw that picture, I was like, okay. So the reason I'm sharing that, it has nothing to do, literally nothing to do with today's topic.
Except to listen and continue to trust those little nudges. And when something kind of catches your attention, like that little piece of wood did on this box, that was like, what is that? Follow that. It led me right to exactly what I needed. I needed to see that picture. I needed confirmation that he heard every word I said this morning. And so don't dismiss things like that when they're put in your path and you catch your eye on them and you linger on them, or you lingering on a thought or a feeling. Follow that. Those are your little breadcrumbs, because those signs and things are all around you. And I truly believe, again, believe whatever you want to believe. I'm not here to shift that for anyone. I'm just sharing my experience in that things like that are what have guided me through that dark night. If you're familiar with the terms of spiritual awakening, dark night of the soul is a thing. And let me tell you, it has gotten pretty dark over the years, but I have continued to try to find the light. And it's been things like that that have guided me through, that have, I'm like, it's okay. You're on the right path. Keep going. I know this is hard, but the light will get brighter on the other side. And so I know, and it certainly has, but it's little things like that that's just like, oh, help you take that sigh and, okay, I am being heard. I am being guided. I have to continue to trust this process and all of those things. So I just wanted to share that little nugget with all of you. And hopefully, if you have a story like that, I would love to hear that. I would love to share it on the podcast. Or just if you send me a message, I would love to hear if you have those little moments, because they fill my cup in so many ways when I hear that. And it opens more people up to those things, because we have talked about that, I'm sure, in this episode as well, is that these signs and synchronicities are out there for all of you. They are out there for all of you. I'm not some like weird mystical creature that just magically gets all of these things. I'm just really open and aware. And I don't look for them. I just notice things. I notice little things. I can see a car driving by and my eyes directly go to 888. Or if I see a hawk in the sky, or there's all these little things, like I just notice. And I can tell the way I feel when something is meant for me, when something resonates with me.
And that is all part of this journey as well, on really getting connected, to your senses. Noticing when things light you up, noticing when things drain you, noticing when you're getting the nudges, the pit in your stomach, the lumps in your throat, and all of those things. And so those are all your indicators, and all the ways, again, where you can use your tool as a body. Wait, your body as a tool. That's what I wanted to say. Blocking the channel, traffic jam. To help you along the way. Again, your body is giving you feedback all the time. And I'm not even just talking in terms of your physical health and your energy and, talk about suppressed emotions and all that stuff. Your body is constantly trying to get your attention. And to me, that's one of the ways. Like when I get full body goosebumps, I know that's a hell yes, right? So oftentimes you'll see me on these podcasts, if you're watching, like I'm like kind of rubbing my arms because I get goosebumps when people are talking, or you'll see if they say something, I kind of like, oh, or I'll light up, or it looks like I get struck by a bolt of lightning because I'm like getting this download or this thought or this idea. And so my body is very reactive to energy and to those things. And so I'm really pay attention to that. And that is available for all of you, whether you identify with being spiritual or not. That is available for all of you if you're open to it. And so are these signs and synchronicities. So I completely digress because, again, that was not the topic today. Maybe I should just keep rolling with this. But no, what I wanted to talk about was basically how to not give away your power, how to get your power back. And I've talked about this in various ways throughout different episodes, but I wanted to specifically talk about it today, knowing that the holidays are coming up, knowing that we just went through a recent election, and knowing that this is something that we do on a daily basis, is constantly giving away our power. And the reason that this topic idea came up was following the election in a conversation that I had with someone at the gym who has a young daughter. And this is not a political podcast whatsoever. And that is not the point of this. But what happened was his daughter was messaging him, expressing that she was very scared and saying, he let me read the text. She's like, I'm not okay. I'm really scared. Basically, that was the gist of the text. And he's like, what do I do? What do I say? And I kind of sat with that for a second and was like, well, obviously she needs to move through these feelings. She needs to know that she's safe and supported, like in these emotions. And I'm really proud of her for expressing them and for reaching out, because that's really important too. You don't have to sit in those feelings alone. I said, but at some point, and again, this is with whatever is going on in your life, is you have to decide where you want your energy to go. Because in that moment, all of her energy and all of her power was going to the thing that was scaring her, right? We're giving power to that thing that we are focused on. And so when we think about all of the other things that we want to be doing, that we could be doing to better our lives, to better our situations, to empower ourselves, we're not putting any energy towards those things. So the one thing that she was actually scared of and fearful of was the one thing she was pouring more of her energy to and taking away from the things that would actually help her feel better. And again, sometimes you're in the moment, you got to move through that, you got to feel that. Yes. But that's where you get to decide at what point are you going to take your power back and really kind of like disconnect that, or like cut that energetic cord so you can start to put your energy where you want and need it most. And this applies with so many things in life. And that was, again, it was just an example. But I think about this, I talk about this with my kids all the time when they get spatting at each other. And then Aria, for whatever reason, like she can't let it go that Arlo did X, Y, or Z. And I'll say to her, like, you're giving him your power right now. You are, by not being able to move on from this, again, feel your feelings, we'll validate your feelings, we'll move through all of that, we'll go through those stages. But at some point, you get to decide, are you going to stay in this energy and continue to give him your power, or are you going to call your power back and say, no, I'm not going to let this bother me anymore. I am moving on to enjoy my day. And so I will let her know, like, if you are deciding to stay here in this whatever energy, whether you're angry or miserable or whatever, that is your choice. Like, once you have felt like you have validated, you have felt seen, you have felt heard in it, then you get to decide how long you want to stay there. And I think that's where a lot of us get tripped up, is we don't realize, like, no, we have the choice. And if we keep putting it on other people, like if she keeps like blaming Arlo, she keeps giving Arlo her power. When he's off doing something else, he's completely forgotten about it already. But here she is stewing, still giving her energy to the thing. And we have to look at areas in our life, like, where are we doing this? Where am I doing this in my life? And it's oftentimes, think about the situations where you're stewing, where you're delaying, where you're procrastinating, where you're avoiding, where you are stuck in anxiety, where you're stuck in depression, where you're stuck in fear. And thinking about this energetic cord going to that thing and just being able to see literally your energy going into that thing. When you know, I don't want to focus on that problem anymore. I don't want to focus on that person anymore. I don't want to put energy towards that anymore. Like, okay, then make the decision and the choice. And sometimes I will like physically like karate chop. Like, you can visualize it, sure, but I'm a very like hands-on person. So I will literally pretend I'm like karate chopping these energetic cords around me. Be like, no. You don't get to pull up my energy anymore. And that is how you learn how to protect your energy. And I had to learn this, again, the hard way. And I've talked about being an empath and how you take on other people's energy on these episodes before. But that is part of it, is one, yes, you need to learn how to protect your energy. In some situations, you can't always control the situation or the environment or things like that, right? Like, you're going to work, you know Betty down the hall is going to be bitching about something, because she always does on Monday morning. Well, you get to decide, one, are you going to even put yourself in that environment? If you're like, well, this is my job, and right now, this is where I'm at. Okay. So then learn how to protect your energy before you even go into work, whether you need to see, like, I always think of those, like big bubbles or the big bouncy balls, and people are inside of them. Like, if you almost envision that, like just putting this little shield around you and just kind of setting that intention before you get out of your car, that you're not letting anyone's negative energy mess with yours, just setting that intention, whether you actually visualize that self, I mean, it'd be kind of funny, right? And that alone would raise your vibrations to see yourself in this giant ball. But you also then get to decide, okay, I'm at work, I'm in my office. Am I going to go down the hall and engage in that? Or should I maybe start changing my route or, my plans of going in the break room or walking past her office or something like that? Like, how can I not create that energetic cord? But if I'm putting myself in that situation, like, I'm willingly plugging into that. But then you also need to intentionally unplug yourself from it. And I think that's where we don't always take that step. Is we realize it's happening. We realize this person is draining our energy. We realize the situation is draining us, but we don't ever like energetically cut the cord from that. And again, that can just be something as simple. Sometimes I'll just like kind of slap, like, blah, 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 like snap out of it, Tami, like something like that. Or I used to tell clients, like, just spin in your office chair. Like, sometimes you just need to like shake off the energy, right? You get kind of stuck in it, or you're feeling overwhelmed or whatever it is. And sometimes you just literally like kind of need to shake it off. Oh, I should start singing Taylor Swift song, right? Probably need like copyright for that. And I would just get canceled. But I mean, truly, we have to learn how to shake it off. And sometimes, I mean, there's actual practices where they have you do that, where you're literally, just kind of like energetically shaking it off. And just by doing that, I could feel a difference. And so little tools like that is one way you can start to protect your energy. But you also have to think about the things of, how can I like get my power back? Because we give it away all the time. And some of us, you might not have even known what it felt like because you were silenced as a kid. and you never felt like you had a voice. Maybe you had a sibling that always talked for you or talked over you. Maybe you were told you were better to be seen and not heard. And so all of these little ways where we started to kind of feel disempowered at a really young age. Like, oh, you're not smart enough. You're not this enough. You're not whatever enough. Right? So already we're starting to feel like we're not powerful beings, and we are, but we start giving our power away at such a young age. When I started dimming my light, I started giving my power away to people that, I haven't seen in 30 years. I still had an energetic cord to them and that feeling. And so at some point I had to decide, like, am I going to cut that cord and reclaim that power? And again, I mentioned this so many times as you hear it every time that intro. Mr. Zavatsky, you can feel my energy still connected to my FIAD teacher from 7th grade. That is an energetic cord I have had this whole time. Didn't know it until the last few years. And even now when I want to try to sever it, there's still times when I feel disempowered, when I feel like, oh, you're too much, Tami. I draw it right back. I give energy right back to it, and I go right back to that moment. And so it's not a cord you just cut it once and like, oh, poof, good to go. Like, it's active work. And sometimes like that cord is a lot thicker than he wanted to be. And it's not so easy to cut some of those. Some people, like, you can cut them out of your life and it's like, peace out, homie. Thanks for the life lesson. But other times it's not, and it's hard because you might have a history, or, there might be some nostalgia there, or there might be memories, or there might be a lot of pain and hurt yet, and you're not ready to forgive them, or whatever it is. And so you have a hard time cutting this energetic cord. But when you really start to look around at things in your life, the things that drain your energy, the things that like, gosh, when I have a conversation with this person, I just kind of feel like wah, wah. Or when I go to work, or when I do these things, start to look at the things in your life. The people maybe you make a list of this. Maybe I'm going to give you guys some homework on this episode. If you were to write a list of the things that drain you, the shoulds, the I have to, the responsibilities, it's just like, all right. But also, again, when you're around people, or even at certain places, like, I know, like water parks, for example, drain the shit out of my energy. And it took me a long time to figure out why. And I used to feel really guilty about that because, like, I want to be this like happy, joyful mom at the water park because it should be really fun. And it is now that I can protect my energy when I'm there. But now I realize, like, it's a lot of people contained in a space where there's like no fresh air. And when again, being an empath, you take on other people's energy. And when there's a lot of energy there and it's just a lot of like low vibey stuff, and whether you're, what people are drinking, what people are eating, there's a lot of stuff, right? And there's a lot of low vibrational places anywhere you go. But I realized that, like, oh my gosh, like, that's why I felt so when I would go there. And now the last few times that I've gone to water park, like, I've had so much more fun because I went in kind of shielding up and protecting my energy. And so think about those things. Again, the people. And it's not that when I say this, like, you're writing down people's names and you're like cutting this cord, like you're cutting this person out of your life. Like, no, you're just cutting that energy, that negative energy you have with that person. And hopefully by being able to cut off the negative energy that you have towards them, it could allow for you to rebuild maybe an energetic cord that feels more positive when you're ready. I talked about that on the superhero episode when we were talking about the villain phase. And that sometimes by you being the villain and setting those boundaries, at some point you might be able to come back and reestablish that relationship with better boundaries, with better communication. But you might have needed to actually sever that cord first for both parties to be able to step away, really reflect on what the dynamics were. Were they healthy? Were they not? And if not, that can empower you to actually set some boundaries about, like, this is how I want to be treated. And if this relationship can't function like that, then maybe that energetic cord stays severed. But now you maybe have peace around that. When I think about forgiveness, And a lot of people have a hard time forgiving people. And you have to remember that forgiveness is for you. Because if you are holding on to anger and resentment towards someone, that is an energetic cord that every day you fester on that, and every day you stew on that, you are giving that person your power. You are draining your energy and giving it to that person. And who knows what they're using it for. But you don't get to use it because you gave it away, because you're still stuck in that cycle of anger, resentment, hurt, whatever it is. And again, this is where when we look at childhood wounds or whatever it is, it's not about staying stuck in those things. It's about learning how to move through them and removing the energy around them. And that's why, and Zoe and I have been on these episodes together and we've talked about energy. There's a great episode, I don't know what number it is. She came on and it was about helping a loved one transition. I think that was the title. And so it got lost in that one, that was such a beautiful episode about her grandfather. But in that episode, we walked through like each of the energy centers and when they get blocked, what can happen. And so go back and listen to that episode because it's fascinating. And that's why I like to incorporate like energy work into the work that I do, because I know it can create like a traffic jam energetically. And if we don't have access to our throat chakra, like being able to speak, you cut off your power. You lose your voice. You can't set boundaries. You can't speak up when you see injustice. You don't know how to ask for your needs because you literally can't communicate it because you have a blocked throat chakra when you were told to shut up as a kid. Again, think about being a baby, how many times we shush babies when they are crying because they have a need that needs to be met, but it's inconvenient to us. And so we're, shh, you're okay. And your baby's like, no, I'm freaking hungry, yo. You're okay. So how early on were we already being taught to disregard our intuition, disregard our needs because it was an inconvenience to someone else? Right? For a lot of you, you're a freaking baby when that started. And to no one's fault, like we all were parenting the best that we could. And I definitely remember moments like that too. And even now I have to catch myself sometime when my kids are in a moment and it's inconvenient for me because I'm doing something like, hold up, Tami, check yourself. So it's a constant reminder, like I'm not perfect at this either, but think about that. And that's where you can give yourself some grace and compassion. Is like, oh my gosh, like I was being trained as a baby to not inconvenience anyone with my needs. So yeah, it's going to be hard for me to find my voice now as an adult when I feel like I deserve to be treated better, when I feel like I deserve a pay grade or a raise or whatever it is, when I deserve X, Y, or Z, it's hard for you to find your voice. And so you kind of like lose your power. And when you think about your solar plexus is basically where that's housed, that self-confidence, that self-worth. And that's a lot of your masculine energy in there too, where you're just kind of like, yeah, like I deserve this, I'm worth this. But again, I think of that has been my whole thing, right? Is worthiness. And so of course that was like a massive block. And so I can't even get up to my throat and speak my truth because it's still so blocked because I was still questioning my worthiness. So I had been giving away my power for most of my life because that wound started so early in that feeling of worthiness. And so now it's like this active thing that I have to do, like maintenance on my energetic body to keep that flow of traffic going between them. Because if one gets shut down, they basically all do. And I don't want to shut down, again, my ability to channel, because that is one of my gifts. And if I can't channel and I can't speak, like I literally cut myself off from what I'm supposed to be doing. And it's taken a lot of work to feel confident in that area to be able to do that, right? And having to own that as one of my gifts. And so this is all, again, like energetically related. And so again, think what you want to think, but when you start to correlate all of this, it's really hard to deny that it's all connected. And so much of this goes back to our childhood. Because again, it's one thing to say empowering affirmations in the mirror every morning, but trust me, I did that for a long time too. And Like, sure, it was good practice to open up my throat chakra, but I mean, so is singing. And that is actually a good way to try to keep that open. But then it comes to like actually speaking a need and like, well, no, I don't need to do that. And then we don't, and then we suppress it. And then it's this whole vicious cycle. And so when it comes to reclaiming your power, you have to, one, think about where is my energy going right now, to be able to kind of catch yourself in that moment. What am I giving energy towards? Have I continued to vent about my boss at work, but have done nothing about it? You know, I remember someone saying to me when I would do that back in the day, like, well, what are you going to do about it? You can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. If you're not going to say anything, you don't get to sit here and bitch about it. Like, are you going to take action on the thing? And sometimes like you kind of need that tough love, like, oh yeah, you're right. Oh, but then having to take action on the thing, that's when we shut down, right? It's kind of like, what did Santino call it? Like the peacock fighting, where you're like all big and like, yeah, I can gossip about this and bitch about this. But then it comes to actually like confronting that person, like, yeah, no, I'm good. Okay, bye. And then you just, right there, boom, disempowering. But the other thing too, and I come back to this, I had no intentions of talking about like energy this much or chakras in particular, because I know some of you that might like turn you off right away. And I hope that you just stay open and just listen and see what resonates and, you know, take what resonates and leave the rest. I don't care. But maybe kind of sit with it and phrase it in your own way. I don't care. But sometimes too, when we think about being able to find our voice and speak our truth and speak our power, you also have to make sure it's filtered through your heart, right? Because if it's not filtered through your heart, guess who's delivering that message for you? Your ego. And guess what your ego likes to sound like when it's trying to speak its truth? It kind of either sounds like a bitch, a jerk, a know-it-all, whatever. Sometimes it doesn't come off quite right. And that's where we might stick our foot in our mouth, or we say something that might hurt someone's feelings, or we get ourselves into trouble. Whatever the case, that message may not be something that people are actually able to receive. Because if I want to deliver a message about my needs, if I'm doing it in a way where I'm attacking that person, they're not going to be able to receive what I'm saying. You know, and then I get mad because they're not hearing me. But I didn't deliver it in a way where it would have allowed their ego to let the walls down. If I'm coming in with my gloves on, trying to deliver this message and state my power and all that kind of stuff, but I'm doing it in that kind of way, in that kind of energy, that person, their ego is putting their wall up too. You're not getting through to them. And so that's where we kind of have to check ourselves beforehand. Like, is this coming through my heart? Or is this coming through my ego? And there have been times, I specifically remember about a month or so ago, I got a text message and it like fired me up. Like, I have never felt my heart beat that hard in my chest before. And I immediately, you know, that like rage text where you got your thumbs going and, and I had to pause because I'm like, nope, this is not the energy to respond in. Because I knew if I would have responded in that energy, my ego would have sent that message and I would have triggered that person. And that was not what I wanted. I did not want that at all. Because I know what my goal and intent in this conversation and relationship is. And it was not going to be anything that came from my ego to help that. And so I had to sit with that and again, take some deep breaths and make sure that I was grounded and make sure that the response I delivered back was coming through my heart, was me speaking my truth, and that it wasn't delivered by my ego. Because I'm not playing that game. I'm not playing that game. If you want to have a real conversation with me, I want to have that with you, not your ego. And that's when it's hard, is when people don't understand when they're in ego and when they're not. But it is possible for everyone to learn that, because my kids know that. They know now when they're operating in ego. And it's actually a really funny side story. Here's one of those tangents you look forward to, is we had my daughter's parent-teacher conferences earlier this week. And after we went through like all the regular class stuff, her teacher, they had her pick like an emotional goal that she wanted to work on. And they gave like 3 or 4, what she said are the more common ones that kids pick. And Aria reads the first one, and it was basically like identifying your emotions. And Aria starts laughing. And her teacher kind of looks at her, she's like, why are you laughing? And Aria's just like, 'cause my mom lives and breathes inner child work and ego. And that's basically all we talk about 24/7 is our emotions. She wasn't wrong. She wasn't wrong. And I'm not joking. It is like fluent in our house because the kids' egos comes out all the time. And so does mine if I don't check it. But when they're getting at each other and they pick at each other and prod at each other with names or whatever, now they know. And I tell you what, it has made such a huge difference in being able to end the conflict or get through it faster because we know that. And both kids are able to take more ownership of that, knowing like, oh, this was ego, that actually like wasn't me, but I'm sorry for what I said when my ego was triggered. Or I'm sorry that I threw this football at you when I was feeling triggered. Like, yeah, your ego did that. You knew better. I know that Arlo knows better. I know that Aria knows better. I know that Tami knows better in those moments. And I told you the story in whatever episode when I slammed my phone down and broke it. Tami knew better. My ego in that moment, yeah, not so much. And so it is possible to start to learn of when we are kind of operating from our true authentic self versus our ego. When we're operating out of fear. And again, when it's about reclaiming your power, oftentimes a lot of us will play small. And that's kind of that whole dimming your light. And when we go into this whole fight, flight, or freeze thing, or fawn's another one, is you think of it as a bear. You're being approached by a bear. You either go into fight, like I'm going to fight the bear, or you go into flight, you're running away from the bear, you freeze in front of the bear, or you try to make friends with the bear. That's basically to sum it up. But that's what happens. And when you get into that, when you're too far in, you get triggered, and ego has already taken over, and it happens so fast. You've already lost your power. Because it's really hard to snap out of it when you're frozen. It's really hard to reclaim your power when you're sprinting away from the problem. And that might be something at work, like, ooh, I don't want to go into this meeting, or I have this big project coming up and I'm doing 18 other things to distract myself. It's hard to regain that focus and get yourself motivated and empowered again. Or you're in the middle of a spat with your spouse and you realize whoa, I'm in fight mode right now. It's much harder in the moment to stop yourself versus to notice when things are happening and be like, ooh, how am I feeling here? Ooh, feeling triggered. Probably should take a moment. Need a pause here. Maybe need to step away. Maybe need to, again, spin in my chair, slap my cheeks and wake up, snap out of it. Or get outside, or any of these things to just kind of help clear that energy really quickly. Again, cutting those cords of whatever is going on so you can be grounded in your approach moving forward. But so often we're operating when we're already triggered. And that's when you're operating from ego and you do things and say things in ego that you're probably going to regret later. And that is disempowering. Don't let your ego take your power. And I know I've shared this analogy on here before as well, probably many, many episodes ago. When you think about, you're driving a bus. It's to your inner child's happy place, to all your goals and dreams. That's where you want to go. And you should be driving that bus. You should have both hands on the steering wheel. But your ego has been the one trying to protect your inner child your entire life. That's its one goal. So ego is not a bad thing. Ego is not oh, you think you're better than everybody? That's a part, that can be one aspect of ego. But for many people, it is not that. I find that's actually rare. What I find more is that people's ego keeps them feeling small. it doesn't allow them to go after their dreams because that fear of failure is so great. So ego can, either make you feel like you're better than everybody or that you are less than and that you're not worthy of your goals and dreams or feeling good. And so you have to like be mindful of that, but that's ego's one goal, is to protect your inner child. And so whatever personas that has taken on over the years, it's good for you to know that, like, who's on the bus? Do you have the people pleaser on the bus? Do you have the overachiever on the bus? Do you have the underachiever on the bus? Because all of them want to take over the driver's seat when they feel triggered. And so again, when you think about like going into the holidays, that can be a really triggering time for people. And I think I'm actually going to create a whole episode on that because there's a lot to that. And generally the reason people think that we overeat and all that kind of stuff around the holidays is just because the food's so good. No, it's not. That's the surface level of that. You know me, I'm going to take it all the way down. But anyway, I thought about creating an episode around the holidays and stuff, but holidays are really, really triggering for people because no matter how much work you have done in your everyday life, and maybe you're really successful in your career and your job and you've got all these friends, but the second you go back to your hometown, it's like you are supposed to play that part and that role all over again, and you feel completely disempowered despite all the work that you have done. And that was a conversation I had with my friend Jamie, the editor. Again, I'm trying to think what episode number she was. I'll put the episodes that I reference in the show notes, so you want to go back and watch those. But that was a great example because she is a freaking editor of a very popular millions of readers magazine, has a very successful podcast, like done all these things, right? Worthiness up the wazoo. But she found when she would go back to our hometown, she felt like she had to play that role or was cast back into that high school role that felt very disempowering to her. And so she would avoid it for a while. Whereas now, like going back there and being a little bit more aware of that, protecting her energy now and knowing her worth. But that's real. And sometimes you can just go back to a place and feel disempowered. Like if you don't think those things hold energy or that your body doesn't remember, there's a whole book called Your Body Keeps the Score because your body remembers. So you might not realize like, gosh, why do I always seem to gain weight every time this year? Maybe it's because there was something traumatic that happened this time, 30 years ago, this time of year. And because your ego has blocked you from it, but your body remembers, your inner child remembers, there's things going on subconsciously, but your ego is trying so hard to suppress them that for whatever reason, you seem to gain weight every time this year. And I actually started to pick up on that one. I'm like, gosh, like, why is it? It always felt like it was the same time of year. And I was like, oh my gosh. And like really noticed a pattern with that. And so then I could support myself so much more emotionally, nutritionally, whatever it was around that time period. So again, when you think about that, when you have anniversaries come up of people that you have lost in your life, is finding a way to support yourself emotionally and spiritually and all of those things, because your body will remember. And if you can honor that and move through those emotions rather than trying to suppress or deny like how hard this anniversary date is, like, no, it's hard. Acknowledge that, feel that, move through that, support yourself through that, celebrate them in a way where they would look down and be like, oh, like they're doing our favorite thing. Yay. Like there's something that made you feel connected. Certainly like have your moments of feeling sad and grieving, but also look for the joy and bringing those memories and those things forward as well. But going back to just being around certain people or certain places, you have to be mindful of your energy and how you feel. If there is this constant state of dread going back to, families for the holidays, you need to check with that and work with that. And maybe you need to set a boundary of like, you know what, I'm not able to come this year. And that can be a form of self-care. And I know, again, for people pleasers, that's really hard, but you have to do what's best for you. And that is like finding your voice, finding your power and saying, no, I need to set this boundary because for whatever reason, I need to listen to my intuition, and this does not feel good for me to be here. And I don't want to have to go and like put on this mask and put on this pretend happy face. And maybe you get back to a place where you can join in on those things and it feels good. But if you're not there in that moment, you need to be able to speak your truth about that and feel okay with that, because you're doing what's best for you and maintaining your power rather than giving it away. Or setting boundaries, like, yeah, if we do come home, X, Y, and Z need to happen, or these conversations are off the table. Let's say your family disagrees on politics and you've got Thanksgiving coming up. Maybe you all agree that this is not going to be on the table for discussion. And maybe that's a boundary that everyone sets beforehand. Or if you know that that's just not going to happen and you don't want to put yourself in that environment, that is your choice. And that is how you can maintain your power around that. Or if you do decide to go and it does happen, you can clear your energy after. But there's a lot of things, and I'm not even politics is just one example. You can get into a million things where families kind of spat and disagree, or people they say things that are incredibly triggering and have no idea. And I think about this, something that seemed so innocent and simple, and I had no idea that it was triggering someone in my family. I have a bunch of nieces and nephews, and several of them are like super tall. And as they were growing, I would always comment every time I would see her, like, oh my gosh, like, you're getting so tall. Not realizing that at that time, at that age, was really triggering for her. I thought it was a fantastic thing. I would have loved to have been as tall as she was. Hear me, pitting out at 5'5". I thought that was a great thing, but I wasn't seeing it from her perspective. And that at her age, she was maybe one of the taller ones in her class, and that felt really uncomfortable. She felt like she stood out. And who knows if kids had made fun of her at one point for being the tallest one in her class. But from my perspective, I thought it was a great thing, but for her, it was not. And then to hear that every time. And so I think about that, now with my nieces and nephews, of just like some of those like same questions that they get. Like, I don't want them to dread the holidays, because like, oh, I got to ask these questions again, or I have to go through this again. And so I kind of like think about that and just like, okay, maybe we just need to not ask the surfacey level stuff and just be more genuine, which is great, but that's really hard at family stuff sometimes, because we are so used to just doing surface level stuff, because that feels safer. I'm using air quotes for those of you that are listening. That feels safer than actually having deep, open, honest conversations about what's actually going on in our life. And I know that is hard for me. I apologize for those of you listening, just hearing my throat up vomiting sounds. I hate small talk. I hate it. Oh, it's incredibly uncomfortable. Like, talk about your childhood wounds and trauma all day. I'm there for it. And I know that maybe sounds weird, but because again, I see that as like, ooh, let's go and like find the gift, right? Like, to me, it doesn't feel like this awful, dreadful, sad, painful thing, because I know that you were given that story for a reason and that there's a gift in there. And so I want to go in and help you find it. But I also know how to hold space for people when they just need to talk. And I just want people to be real and authentic. And so it kind of makes me cringe when I have to do the small talk stuff. And now I do less and less and less and less of that. And sometimes like I just don't engage in small talk. If I have to, like I can do that, but not in a way where I have to abandon myself, if that makes sense. Because I think that's what I used to do in the past. And that's why my inner child was like, no, don't fluff this up or make this sound this way or that way because you think that's what that person wants to hear. But I recognized that there were certain people around where I could share like exciting things in my life. And I thought that it would be met with like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited for you. And it was not. And I was like, oh, so, okay. And I learned at that point, my ego told me to dim my light and to not be so excited, to not share those exciting things in my life. Whereas now I was like, fuck that, crank that light, the dimmer switch back up. And again, hand them the sunglasses and be like, I'm sorry, is this too bright for you? Here you go. Or I just don't share those things with those people. Like they're just not my people for that. Can they be my people for other things? Sure. And can it be a more surface level type relationship? Yeah, like I can be okay with that now because I have those people in my life where I can celebrate those things with. I can have deep, meaningful conversations with. But I don't need that from everybody. You know, and they talk about these different circles, right? You have like your inner circle and there's outer circles and things like that. And I think when you start to kind of see people that way, you realize like not everyone gets to have access to you. Not everyone gets access to my full-blown energy. I'm really protective of that now. And while, yes, I share a lot on this podcast and it feels like you guys are all in my inner circle because you do know a lot going on in my life, you know, there are certain aspects where I have to protect those parts of me. Because if I share something that's really deep and meaningful with me, with someone who, again, is maybe speaking caterpillar language and doesn't know how to support me through that, that can really disempower me and start to create doubt or fear or worry. And that isn't what I needed in that moment. And so now I have to be really mindful of if I am exchanging energy with people, I have to be mindful of what am I getting in return. And kind of going back to that superhero episode, if that is you and you are constantly giving, but you are getting nothing in return, it is time for you to reclaim your power, reclaim your cape, whatever you want to think about it, and start to, again, setting some of those boundaries, cutting those energetic cords. But you first have to be aware of where is my energy going. So going back to that homework assignment is truly get a piece of paper out, write down the things that light you up, the things that make you feel good, the things that excite you, the people that excite you. And then on the other side, writing down the things that don't. You know, and I'm even talking about household chores. If there's somebody who's like, I freaking dread this, like maybe that's something someone else in the family can do. Like it's little things like that that can make a huge difference in your day. And this actually just came up in regards to my business because if you've been listening, you know that like worthiness and stuff around money is a constant thing that I am working on and feeling worthy and all of this stuff around it. But I know, like, yes, I'm doing the work. So it's not that by me, you know, having a business manager, that is me avoiding the issue at all and just passing it off to someone else. I'm still actively doing the work. But I also know that when I get caught up in billing and anything around that, it completely drains my energy to where then I am not giving my best and operating my gifts. My energy is being pulled into that. And if it's getting pulled into that, I don't have access to do the other things that I actually love and that light me up. And so at some point, I was like, I have to realize that like I am worthy of receiving help in this area and that this is not my area of expertise. I do not want to put time and energy into this. And interestingly enough, it was right around the 1st of November. So for those of you that are into numbers, 11/1/111. And that also happened to be the new moon, which is like a big, like if you're going to manifest any day, it was that day. And so I was trying to set, you know, some goals for 2025, like where I want to see my business grow and all of these things. And I was like, well, if this is the case, Tami, you better figure out a better way, you know, around a system around money and all of those things. And so you're not falling back into these old patterns of avoidance and whatever else. And what do you know, that next day, someone who actually loves this aspect offered to be my business manager. And I was like, well, thank you, God in the universe, for sending me exactly what I needed, for who I needed to support me. Because that is something that lights her up. You should hear this woman talk about it. It's like, yeah, that's her thing. For me, energy completely different, night and day. So why am I putting energy towards that? That was very disempowering. That was where I was giving so much of my power away. And not in a good way. And so like even looking at things like that was something on my to-do list, like give that away. That is not something that lights you up and that empowers you. So go through the things in your life. And I understand that this assignment alone could be super triggering because you might put people on there where it's like, oh shit, they're a part of my everyday life. And that's where I know this whole healing journey thing, some people only go so far, because if you start peeling back the layers and you get deeper and deeper, you see sometimes the bigger, deeper issue. And if you're going to go there, that may require some big, massive change that feels really scary, that you're not ready for. But you wouldn't be led to it if you weren't ready. It's like the little breadcrumbs, full circle moment. Boom, I'm actually like, oh, I should wrap this up. Oh, look at that, full circle moment, perfect timing. Is the sign that I got this morning with the picture in the box, right? So even just by doing that and just doing an inventory and doing a self-assessment of what are the things that drain my energy, the people, the places, the things. And again, I'm even talking about what food makes you like, oh, I just eat that and I feel like crap. Write that down. And you may like, oh, I don't want to give it up. It's my favorite food. Like, okay, then that is your choice. That is your choice. We all have free will. And, when I think about the shift in like my health, is like at some point I realized what it was like to finally feel good. And I was like, I don't ever want to not feel this way. And I have a very like low tolerance for feeling anything less than really good. So I was like, why would I drink when I actually feel like shit afterwards? Like, I don't want to feel this way. I want to feel that way. And so I don't even know, it's probably been 2.5, maybe even, I don't know if it's quite 3 years. I bet it's been about 2.5 years. No, I take that back. I think it was originally 2.5 years. And then on my 40th birthday, we went to this piano bar, and I didn't want to drink. I didn't drink at supper. And then we went to this piano bar, and it's like all like, that's how they make their money, is drinks and tipping. And I was like, I'll just like, it literally, that was my people pleaser. I was still working on it. Right. I'm like, I'll just get a drink, whatever. So I had literally like 2 sips out of it, and then someone spilled it on the table. I was like, oh well. I was weirdly like relieved, because I kind of felt this pressure. Now I don't give 2 shits. I don't. So it's been almost 2 years since I've literally had a drink of alcohol, and no judgment whatsoever if that is something that you decide to keep in your life, but know that that is a lower vibrational thing. You generally don't feel good after you have that. And that goes with food. That goes with other things that we do in our life. That is feedback when you don't feel good physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically, that those are not things that are empowering you, that are fueling you. But you have a choice, right? If you decide to go out and have a wild Saturday night and drink away, that next day is like, okay, you don't get to bitch about it. That was your choice. You knew exactly what was going to happen, right? And I think about that in certain situations around certain people, like, you knew that was going to happen. I shouldn't say that, because I don't want to put energy towards that and like kind of manifest those situations, but you kind of have to be prepared for that, right? And that is where you can really, again, equip yourself with protecting your energy, clearing your energy, cutting those cords, and reclaiming your power. But so much of this comes from childhood stuff and why we give our power away. And I feel like I could create maybe like a workshop on this, because there's so much that goes into it. And actually like do like an energy clearing along with it would be super fun, because it's all related. And if we can help clear those energy blocks, it can make it easier for you to, again, start to feel safe. First chakra, feel safe, feeling your emotions. Second, third, finding that personal power, making sure it's coming through your heart, being able to speak your truth. And now like really trusting your intuition, and then just knowing like it all, and it makes this process so much easier. Because again, when we think about the energetic highway, if there's a traffic jam, you really ain't going anywhere. And so part of being able to clear that is how you can also reclaim your power. And so if that's something you ever want to explore and do one of those sessions, let me know. You can click the link in my thing to set one of those up, or like do a session, whether it's a 90-minute session or whatever. We can do one of those and connect some of the dots in your childhood, but also be doing some of the energetic work around it. And the other thing that I love and I have realized is, there are people that do like full on like energy sessions, Reiki or whatever like that. And that is kind of what I do. But I also know that just by walking through your story and having that conversation. I call them clearing conversations because they are clearing your energy, because you are finally speaking your truth. And I'm just creating a safe space for you to do that and helping you open up, helping you speak authentically, helping you notice, like, hey, did you know that your intuition actually told you that, but you just didn't listen? Like, I just reflect that stuff back to you. And again, this is where like I love my job, because I just get to help empower you to know that you have everything you need. I'm just helping clear that pathway for you, so the highway is clear for you to drive. And so, but we need to help you reclaim your power in order to do that, to get your hands back on that driver's wheel, the driver's seat. Because yes, you know where you're going. Everyone else on the bus has their own ideas of that, right? It's like the kids in the back just yelling, or everyone trying to give you directions, like, shut up. Like, I know where I'm going. But you also might not know where you're going yet because it's so loud. And hopefully I can help kind of turn down the noise of ego telling you all these things and all those different voices in your head, so you can hear the message. You can figure out the directions and feel confident to drive towards that. So I'm going to wrap this up because we're about at an hour here. And yeah, I'll listen to this back and see if it's worthy of putting out there, because I realized I went, whoop, like, what was this episode about? I don't even know what I'm going to title it yet. Something about power, something or other. But that's kind of how I roll. So hopefully you enjoy this style, because I was actually listening to Jenna Kutcher, and she's the Goal Digger podcast, and it's a huge podcast, right? Like goals. And she was talking about how she sets hers up, and I was like, yep, that's not me. And she actually said, there are some people that can just riff and just take a topic and go. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. She's like, but I can't do that with mine, because theirs are like strictly like more educational and things like that, where there's more of an outline. And a lot of hers do sound kind of scripted. And she actually said, like, people always, criticize me because it sounds like I'm reading this, and really she knows her outline. Whereas me having an outline blocked me and made it a much, much harder for me to deliver my message. So this is, again, an example of that was very disempowering for me to do it the way someone else does it and feels empowered. So you have to be able to find your own pathway, your own highway in that. Oh, I entertain myself sometimes. Like, oh, you just did it again. Came full circle. So thinking about those things, and if you are interested or want me to create some sort of workshop on this topic, I might actually consider doing that coming up here. But I have to get ready. I know you guys are going to be listening to this on the 19th, which is very exciting day astrologically. 15-year cycle should be ending today. So those of you that are like feeling like, whoa, major shift, yeah, that's why. But I would have just gotten back from Sedona by the time you're listening to this, because I'm recording a little bit early, because I'm leaving for Sedona for our inner child healing retreat. And I'll get back on the 17th. So this episode will be airing the 19th for those of you that are listening to it on the Tune In Tuesday. But whenever you listen to it, please do something that makes your inner child feel empowered. Whether that's speaking your truth, doing something you love, just going outside and having fun, whatever it is, ask your inner child, like, what would make you feel empowered today, and do that thing. All right. Until next week, thank you all for tuning in. And yeah. All right. Peace out.